Welcome to Mothering from Within, the podcast where we dive into the heart of parenting during those magical yet challenging first few years. I'm Kaili, a mama of two, a pediatric occupational therapist, and your guide on this beautiful journey of motherhood. Every week, we explore the wonders and hurdles of motherhood with curiosity, we gain clarity around our babies, and find the courage to trust our instincts. If you are a mama who wants to do motherhood your way, confidently, courageously, authentically, then you are in the right place. So grab a cup of tea, tuck those little ones in for a nap, or bring them along for the ride. It's time to get curious, gain clarity, and unleash your courage to do motherhood your way. A gentle disclaimer, please do not consider anything discussed on this podcast by myself or any guest of the podcast to be medical advice. The information is provided for educational purposes only and does not take the place of your own medical or healthcare provider. In today's episode on the Mothering from Within podcast, I'm going to talk about sensory thresholds. Now, in order for this to make a little bit more sense, I invite you to go and listen to last week's episode on sensory processing and the 8 senses, because this week is sort of like a part 2 to that. I'm really going to be simplifying this concept of sensory thresholds because I want you to understand the gist of things and not get too caught up in all the therapeutic jargon and concepts. Just know that the world of sensory processing is a big one, with different theories, models, and frameworks to really and truly understand the intricacies. But I want this information to be easy to understand so that you can start to consider this in your life for your baby and yourself. Every individual is unique. Each of us has things that calm us, alert us, and overwhelm us. We all have different sleep patterns and developmental trajectories. So, of course, we all filter or habituate sensory information in unique ways. Some of us become stressed out, anxious, and irritated by a busy, noisy, and cluttered environment. This indicates more of a low sensory stimulation threshold. We function best in quiet, calm, predictable environments. This is totally me and my son. Other people need more sensory input to feel good. They thrive in busy, active environments, and they can tolerate a lot of stimulation. They have a high sensory stimulation threshold. Totally my husband and my daughter. Each of our senses functions in a unique way, and there's a specific threshold for each one. And if you haven't already guessed, everyone has a different combination of thresholds. A baby may have a low threshold in one sensory system, but a high one in another. For example, a baby may get easily overwhelmed with loud noises and crowds, but they may never sit still when they're at home. Babies who filter sensory information more effectively tend to be calmer and more settled. Babies who are sensitive to changes in their world are usually more alert and may be unsettled more often. Learning to recognize your child's individual sensory thresholds and being aware of their sensory needs and preferences will give you a far greater understanding of them. It will enable you to parent with compassion, sensitivity, and confidence. I believe that how we process and integrate sensory information underlies our temperament. But I invite you to ponder this. Now, I want to take a quick moment to talk about sensory processing disorder. Maybe you've heard about this term and it scares you a little. Or perhaps you've noticed that your child is extremely sensitive and you're wondering whether they have sensory processing disorder, but you aren't quite sure where to start. Or maybe you have never heard of this before. Well, now you have. Let's start here. Sensory processing disorder, or SPD, is a condition in which the brain has trouble receiving and responding to information that comes in through the senses. The brain can either under or over register the sensory input, and this affects daily functioning. Some children don't integrate sensory input efficiently or properly. This can lead to extreme fussing, poor sleep habits, feeding problems, and emotional irritability. Babies with sensory processing differences might not roll over, crawl, sit, stand, or even walk within typical timeframes. Rolling and crawling in particular provide a wealth of that touch input. So babies who dislike touch or are very sensitive to it, so more kind of on that tactile defensive side, might try to avoid doing these things. Perhaps your baby or child throws a fit every time you try to get them dressed or brush their teeth or put sunscreen on them. Maybe they don't want to be held, or they have difficulty falling or staying asleep, or maybe they sleep restlessly. They may be sensitive to loud noises that don't seem to bother other babies, or have difficulty transitioning to solids. Or maybe they're always on the move and don't want to be contained in a car seat or a stroller. Then there are babies who have difficulty calming down once they're upset, even when held by a loving caregiver. And frequently, they require extreme efforts and a long period of time to calm down. Yes, I'm talking about colic, which is often thought to be due to digestive issues, but can also be due to body tightness from in utero and birth experiences, or be babies expressing implicit memories and telling their in utero life and birth stories, as I have talked about in a previous episode on tears and crying. But it could also be due to sensory processing differences and having a lower threshold, as I mentioned earlier in this episode. As your baby becomes a toddler and then a preschool age child, they may not move easily or gracefully. Running may be awkward. They may have trouble learning to tie their shoes or ride a bike without training wheels. They may seem clumsy. As you can see, a lot of these quote unquote behaviors are pretty typical for babies and toddlers. But if your child is exhibiting only one or two of these, or if they aren't really affecting their daily functioning, then there's generally no cause for concern. But if your child's sensory thresholds and preferences begin to negatively affect their life or their families, there might be more going on, and I highly suggest you get an assessment done. These are often completed by occupational therapists with specific training in sensory processing and integration. I want to take a moment and let you know about my book, Mothering from Within. Like a good friend, therapist, and mentor, this book offers guidance and support to help you navigate motherhood with intuition, grace, and yes, a bit of humor. It's full of evidence-informed, developmentally appropriate, attachment-focused information on developmental milestones, baby sleep, reflux, feeding, mama mental health, and so much more. To grab a copy, check out the link in the show notes below. Okay, I hope I didn't scare you too much there, but it is important to be aware of and will help you to tune into your baby and child on a whole new level. Now, if you have had some aha moments or have perhaps had a glimmer of understanding your sensitive baby or toddler, you might be thinking, okay, fine, now what? Before I wrap up this episode, I want to give you some tangible takeaway strategies that you can start to implement right now at home with your baby or toddler with very little equipment needed. Are you ready? Let's go. Remember, every child is unique, as is every family. So each child and family will need slightly different strategies and tools. That said, here are some general strategies to help with calming throughout the day. These work for both babies and children who have sensory processing disorder, and also for those who don't. My absolute fave and go-to strategy is deep pressure. Your new mantra could be, when in doubt, use deep pressure. Pressure on the body increases the production of serotonin, which helps produce melatonin, one of the sleep hormones. One of the first things we're taught as new parents is how to swaddle our baby. Well, this was the case when I had my firstborn 8 years ago. But truthfully, swaddling has now become a very controversial topic in our society, with some healthcare professionals still 100% advocating for it and others 100% against it. My personal views are somewhere in between. And I always love the saying that anything in moderation is generally fine. My son hated the swaddle and Houdini'd his way out of every single type of swaddling I tried. And I tried a lot. Eventually, I gave up and we were both happier. My daughter, on the other hand, loved to be swaddled, but only for about 4 hours at night, and she hated it during the day. The reason why swaddling works to soothe so many babies and has been used for centuries is because it provides calming, tactile, and proprioceptive input, making the baby feel safe and secure. Here are a few other ways to get some of that deep pressure. Bear hugs, so firm hugs that really encompass the arms and the legs and the body. Arm and leg massages with firm pressure, with or without lotion. Pillow squishes. This is sort of offering resistive input with a pillow against the body. Really great for those kids with tactile defensiveness. Kiddo burritos, so wrapping them snugly in a blanket and then rolling them out. Weighted blankets or stuffies or on sleep sack, one that's filled with stuffed animals to provide that hugging sensation. My next favorite tool to use, and that I often teach in my Babies at Play classes and to my private clients, is the use of midline activities. So, activities that involve the middle or the midline of our body are soothing and organizing. This is often why older babies and toddlers nurse for hours and throughout the night still and can't calm without it. Usually by about 12 to 18 months of age, your baby is nursing more as a soothing mechanism than for the nutrition. Doing heavy work, any activity that requires you to put pressure on muscles and joints as they're moving. So heavy work through the mouth also really calms that nervous system. And some of the ways that your baby can get this input in are things like sucking on a pacifier, chewing on something like a teething tube or a harder stick-shaped food like a long raw carrot stick if they're old enough, drinking through a straw of a water bottle or even a cup, blowing party favors or bubbles through a straw. Next up is vestibular input or movement. So that's why baby swings, the bouncy chairs, rocking chairs all soothe our babies. The repetitive, gentle, linear, and rhythmic motions provide calming vestibular input to the nervous system and help our babies relax. A few ways that you can get this type of input in is to slowly rock your baby or toddler or child over an exercise ball, either sitting up or on their tummy for a few minutes before bed. Read books to them and nurse them in a rocking chair as part of the bedtime routine. This one was one of our favorites. Another great strategy is to use heavy work or that proprioceptive input to get your child to do some heavy work that involves the joints and muscles. Pushing and pulling can have a very calming and regulating and organizing effect on the body. It also helps the body to feel grounded and centered. Here are some ideas for that. Try having your baby or toddler push and pull things around like a ball, a toy with a string, or even a small push cart. You can add books and blocks to make it heavier. Activities such as crawling, rolling, tummy time on the floor, and even things like downward dog, upward dog yoga poses will also activate the vestibular system, and also the proprioceptive systems. Sound is another great calming tool as well. As parents, we know that shushing noises or humming can help to calm our little ones. These repetitive, quiet sounds mimic the calming and reassuring sounds that your baby heard when inside the womb. So things like mom's heartbeat, her muffled voice, etc., etc. Another idea is to use white or pink noise from a sound machine or a fan or a humidifier or an essential oil diffuser or an app. Those can all be calming for many children and even adults as they're trying to fall asleep, and can also block out other sounds that might startle or wake them. A few other strategies to consider are things like decreasing stimulation and focusing on quieter activities a few hours before bedtime. You could limit the use of toys that make noise or have bright lights. You could dim the lights in the living room or wherever room you're in, play quiet music in the background. Nature sounds and classical or yoga type music are most likely to be calming. Children with sensory processing differences need an enriched diet of activities every single day, just as they need a diet full of nutritious food. The goal is to find the right combination of strategies for your child, knowing that it might change daily depending on what has happened that day. Try some of the strategies that I've just listed and know that it will take some trial and error. And try not to get discouraged if something doesn't work. What's most important is to be consistent when it comes to tuning into your child and in terms of the tools or the strategies that you are choosing. Remember, it takes our brain a while before something moves from new and unfamiliar, aka scary, to familiar and predictable, aka safe. Phew, that was a long episode today. Thanks for staying with me until the end. As we wrap up today, I want to hear from you. What sensory behaviors have you noticed in your child? How about yourself? Have you seen any challenges or unique responses that you'd like to understand better? Send me a message on Insta at The Holistic Baby Guru and share your story. And let's keep this conversation going. Thanks for joining me on the Mothering from Within podcast. Remember, every child is unique, and understanding their sensory world is a beautiful way to deepen your connection with them. Until next time, stay curious, stay tuned, and continue mothering from within. If you think you have a little one that has some sensory processing differences that might be affecting their daily life and you would like more information and support on this, I can help. I offer virtual consultations where we can dig deep into your child's sensory profile, and I can offer some customized strategies to trial throughout the day to help with better sleeping, overall regulation, feeding, and more. Book a free Right Fit call today.